Dale Thompson, the Victorian METS Export Hub Lead for Austmine, Sean Rooney, Strategy and Operations Manager, Global Victoria, and Elizabeth Lewis-Gray, the co-founder and chair of Gekko Systems and founder and deputy chair of METS Ignited. To outline the program to us, Emma Bendall, our operations manager at the AACC, will provide a step-by-step, month-by-month rollout of the program, which is to culminate in B2B meetings for our METS providers with prospect Africa mining companies. We look forward to your engagement in this important project. The purpose of this session is to introduce the Africa METS Accelerator program, a 12-month project that aims to assist Australian METS producers to find new and profitable markets in Africa. And just before we get started, some important pieces of housekeeping. The session is being recorded and will be available shortly afterwards on our AACC website, along with those of our partners. We will have a Q&A session at the end of our various presentations, so please submit your questions at any time throughout the session via the chat box at the base of your screens. And now I'd like to introduce the first of our speakers. In putting together this presentation, we've sought the support of experts with experience in both the Australian METS sector, those with on-ground experience exporting to Africa, and those with knowledge of what makes Australian METS world-class products. Dale Thompson has over 40 years experience in mining equipment technology services, that is METS, and his current role with Austmine has him leading the Victorian Regional METS Export Hub, which involves in assisting businesses grow and become successful exporters in the METS economy, whilst also mentoring some METS businesses. Welcome, Dale. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Duncan. Go to the next slide, Emma. Thank you. Just to set some context, people would often ask, why would people be looking at Australian mining equipment and technological services from a global perspective, and what could we have to offer? I think it's important to understand that mining to the Australian economy has kept growing throughout the pandemic, and that's only because the COVID-safe protocols that have been put in by our mining industry and our METS community. The mining industry is employing 256,000 Australians, and that's a significant sector within the Australian economy. And METS has continued to grow sharply through the high technology products that have been used during this period of innovation and pivoting. Emma, are we able to move the slide forward, please? Thank you. As I look at this slide, I can see that the total METS economy on top of the $256 billion Australian is $114 billion. Now that's the mining equipment, that's the picks and shovels, it's the artificial intelligence, it's the automation, it's the sensing, the communications technology. So it's all those things that are used in a modern mine. On top of the people that are employed in the mining industry directly, the METS sector has another almost 200,000 people. But significantly, Australian METS is seen as leading the world in terms of mine safety, mine automation, and mine planning. So we have a huge export market for those high technology products. But unfortunately, during COVID, 56% of our METS companies have seen a slight decline. 9 out of 10 consider that innovation is a major important product, and it's the Australian innovation in METS that's driving the export dollars. 64% of our METS companies are involved in export, and the rest want to take advantage of that. So 37% are considering that technology is a key opportunity to moving forward. If we could have a look at the next slide, please, Emma. We can see that of that 114 billion, Victoria contributes 26 billion to that METS economy. Now that's significant when you consider states like Western Australia is only 15 billion, Queensland is 22 billion. So really Victoria is punching way above its weight in terms of its METS revenue and turnover, And that's all in the high-tech area. Next slide, please. This slide, it's a little bit busy, if I may, but if we look at the sorts of things that Victoria is manufacturing and exporting to the METS market, is digital technology and automation, engineering and specialist consulting, social, safety and environmental management. It's all these high-tech areas. It's not picks and shovels and bits of metal that will be competitive in any export market. It's highly intelligent, intellectual product that the Victorian METS companies are promoting and exporting around the world and within Australia. Next slide, please. This is the results of a survey that was conducted by Austmine last year, and you can see that the biggest limiting factor on all of the exports that we do is overseas connections. And that's why it's so important that we look at our collaboration with the Australia-Africa Chamber of Commerce and this project that's been funded by Global Victoria, where we're able to prepare our Victorian METS companies, get them ready for export, and then link them through the AACC and connect them to those export markets particularly. Next slide, please, Emma. So that's why it's important to look at our collaboration partners. Austmine, through its METS Export Hub with the Australia-Africa Chamber of Commerce and its METS Accelerator program, will be able to see a successful project. I thank you for the opportunity to participate and collaborate in this, Duncan, and to the Chamber, and for the help of the Victorian Government. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dale. And indeed, the reason I asked you to speak first is because it is Austmine and what you are doing, which is the all-important partner in taking this forward in what we're striving to do, which leads me, of course, to introducing Emma. Emma is our operations manager, and she has the all-important task of outlining our program and pathways into Africa. Emma is, as I say, our operations manager. She only joined us earlier this year, but she's actually has a Bachelor of Professional Communications with a major in journalism and from RMIT. She's currently undertaking her Masters of International Relations with a Diploma of Languages, of course, also from the University of Melbourne. Well, welcome, Emma. We all look forward to your presentation.
Hi there, everyone. So today, my main job is to explain to you how our program, the Africa METS Accelerator program, will actually work in action, what our 3 stages of the program consists of, and to demonstrate how the program will actually help you export into Africa. So as you can see, our program takes place over 3 key themes. We begin with the theme of knowing your market, before moving to knowing your customer, and then finishing with tying them both together with making that connection. So the first stage, I'd first like to talk about Africa as an emerging continent, which is one of the fastest growing export destinations globally. And there are quite a few characteristics that make this so. First, Africa has the youngest population globally, and 60% of people are under the age of 25. It's got the highest population growth rate at 2%. By 2050, even 2 out of 5 children are going to be born in Africa. The continent is also taking strong steps towards economic growth and integration, with the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement expected to boost regional income by 7% or $450 billion US. In action, that will actually encompass the continent's 1.3 billion people and 54 countries. So when fully ratified, it will be the largest free trade area in the whole world. Exporters to Africa can benefit from the improved road infrastructure and simplified supply chain procedures, which have long been challenges to exporting. But it also will reduce tariff and non-tariff barriers. And that demonstrates Africa's willingness to integrate itself more fully into the global economy and to become an even more viable and vibrant investment and export destination. So our program begins with the continent's three most stable and successful mining jurisdictions. So Ghana has long been a standout jurisdiction. It's been the first sub-Saharan African country to reach middle income status. It has that enviable position on the Birmingham gold belt, and it's also secured Africa's position as its top gold producer. It's got a strong history of importing foreign METS machinery, and that number reached $2.5 billion in 2019. And it ranks in the top 10 for political stability in Africa, which helps to contribute to its reputation as a very trusted and established export destination. Botswana also joins Ghana as one of the continent's more stable jurisdictions. It's very well known for its diamond mining, but Botswana is actually looking to diversify its exports away from diamonds and to capitalize more upon the substantial copper, manganese, and nickel reserves in the country. Australia exported just under 10 million worth of equipment to Botswana in 2019. And that trend is expected to rise, considering the METS market value is over $803 million. Furthermore, the Botswanan government has also emphasised its desire to move towards more value-added processing in country, which indicates emerging opportunity for METS producers. Last, of course, the size and depth of the South African mining sector can't be ignored, being valued at $21.5 billion in 2021. South Africa is indeed the largest consumer of Australian METS on the continent, with Rio Tinto, Orion Metals, and Theta Gold dominating the consumption down there. It's also one of the most continent's established mining jurisdictions. And thus, operations in country are now looking to more optimize the existing resources, indicating an opportunity for METS. It's long been a trusted export destination and a gateway to Africa. And with the 80 active mines across the country, South Africa has retained its reputation as one of the continent's best mining destinations. But these three countries are really just the beginning of the resources story in Africa. The continent possesses some of the richest mineral resources in the whole world, and thus it'll undoubtedly begin to attract even more attention in the near future. That's why we're also considering expanding our program to even more enviable mining jurisdictions such as Nigeria and Tanzania in the future. So in terms of the stages of our program, they will take place over 12 months. So as I've already mentioned, the first 4 will be dedicated to getting to know the markets of the target countries before moving to the middle 4 months, which will focus on understanding the demands and trends of the potential customers operating in country. And then finally, the last 4 months will be about bringing you to the customers through business to business meetings with business mentoring support on hand to help give you that best chance of success. So to zoom in on stage 1, we know that before you identify your customers, you need to know the market in which they operate. Knowing your target market is one of the most important aspects of exporting. That's why the first section of our program will see each country analysed through in-depth sessions and webinars led by experts and in-country leaders that will cover crucial market information, from the basic MET sector analysis to a dissection of the regulatory framework, and of course, covering the variety of risks that you might meet in this country. It's an important stage where you'll be able to consider whether your business and your product are right for this country, and perhaps which out of the 3 countries that we're focusing on might be best suited to you. In our second stage, it's all about knowing the customer. And so this will be composed of industry-led roundtables, communicating demands and trends within their operations directly to you. So at this stage, you can start to begin to consider your own value proposition in relation to the needs of the mining operations as they are communicated to you. And you'll be able to learn of information that will allow you to personalize your approach to potential customers. This stage is about getting vital market insights straight from the customer. So lastly, making that connection, our last stage, it is where we bring it all together. So you, the exporters, and the mining companies in country, with strategy and business mentoring support facilitated by us, you'll be able to enter business-to-business meetings with best equipped to reach success. At the end of this stage and of the entire program, you will have made new connections with the companies that matter in Africa's most dynamic mining sectors. So along the way, there are a lot of tools available to you. I encourage you all to explore the AMAP online hub on our website. Here you'll find a curated range of resources. So there's a variety of useful tools that'll help you determine export readiness, such as SWOT and PESTLE worksheets, and step-by-step guides to exporting. You will also find reports of the METS sector in each of our target countries. These reports will function as reference points throughout the program and will contain a written version of the content presented in the Know Your Market stage, such as the export market profiles, the regulatory, and the risk assessment. The online hub also contains practical info, and as the program gets underway, it will be a place where you can request meetings with mentors and network with other METS producers. Information about upcoming events as they appear on the calendar will also be on the online hub. So I do encourage you to check back there regularly. Having now launched the program, we are moving into that first Know Your Market stage, which at present will be in the form of online webinars with a move to face-to-face when possible. So we're going to first cover Ghana and the intricacies of the Ghanaian METS sector. The date of this will be confirmed very shortly, so please keep your eye on all of our social media and your emails if you're subscribed to us, and you will hear for sure the date of our next webinar. So thanks very much for your time and attention today, and we very much look forward to using this program to bring Australia's amazing METS sector into Africa. Thank you for listening.
Well, thanks, Emma. That was most impressive. I'd like to hope that everyone take it on board. Our next speaker, of course, is Sean Rooney, and Sean is the Manager, Strategies and Operations for Global Victoria. He's had over 30 years' experience working with the department and its many predecessors, and he specialises in trade, policy, regulation, statutory approvals, business development, with a focus on resources and strategic management. And during this time, Sean has worked as a geologist, tenement manager, environmental inspector of mines and quarries, and as a senior officer of policy and strategy, senior project manager, business development, and now, of course, works in this all-important space called trade. Welcome, Sean. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks very much, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. I've framed my presentation in a range of different questions, and I'll attempt to answer them as I go through. And I've tried not to touch on areas other people have touched already. So, Emma, if we could have the next slide, please. So why mining? Well, mining is it's a driver of everything we do in the world, everything we touch, everything we sort of use to operate our daily modern lives comes from mining. Now, this diagram here is one I did back in about 2013 to try and communicate to my management at the time the importance of mining, and I still think it's relevant today. If you look at the area to the north between Africa and Australia, it's the area predicted with the most urban and significant population growth. And all the material flows from Australia and Africa are going to be crucial to that. The Chinese Belt and Road Initiative is particularly focused on liberating a lot of the African resources, and it's all to feed the modern day lifestyles we are today. Emerging economies in this new world order, we're going to become more and more prevalent as everyone's lifestyle increases and the need for more products becomes a necessary part of what we regard as a normal life. Now, as part of this, the Australian mining sector exports its knowledge and skills to the world. So it's not just we're good at digging things up, we're also very good at servicing the knowledge to actually go about finding these deposits and also to exploit them. And the other key factor in which no one's covered yet is the Australian mining brand is a global leader. So 10 years ago, if we were having this conversation, Canada was the world's leader, but now it's definitely Australia, and our mining companies and our services companies are the world's leaders. So if I could get the next slide, please. So generally, and I think Dale's touched on this, most of the resources sector, the actual services to the actual mining and the exploration and other stuff is generally grouped under METS. I look at mining as a life cycle. So you basically find something, you explore it, you have a discovery, You develop that, you either produce from that area or you expand it, or if you can't expand it because the minerals have run out, you close the mine. So as well as METS, there's also a whole range of other services that sort of depend on this. There's logistics in terms of getting your product to ports and exporting it to various smelters and markets. There's a whole legal fraternity that sort of survives on mining deals and mining law. There's finance, basically, that drives the whole conveyor belt. And there's the investors, which invest in mining operations, and the finances then fund a lot of the exploration, which makes a dead loss. So as a result of this, regions around the world have developed clusters of expertise, and Australia's, of course, one of those. And initially, this was all to do with supporting their local industries. But what we found is, particularly in Australia, we've grown and we've moved out and we've become global players now. So just to reinforce Australia's leadership role in terms of supplying the global mining sector, and this is from Canadian Magazine in about 2018, Australia attracts about $315 billion worth of funding into Australia. It's the highest source of foreign direct investment, and our companies are generally world's biggest at supplying a range of products into overseas markets. There was a report I read back in 2013 where I think Australian resources companies controlled close to $2 trillion worth of resources yet to be developed. So obviously we're positioned for the future, and the future is definitely going to be mining as far as I'm concerned. So if I can get the next slide, please. So why Africa? Oh, one back, please, if you can, Emma. So why Africa? So Africa apparently hosts 30% of the planet's mineral reserves. So it's most of the gold, cobalt, and 90% of the platinum group metals. Why are a lot of these important is because there's a whole range of products called strategic metals, which the world needs for daily sort of uses, like your mobile phone, your computer, and a lot of these are found in Africa, and they dominate particular markets. Africa produces more than 60 metals and mineral products, and in particular, as Emma's already covered, South Africa, Ghana, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Zambia, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo dominate the African mining industry in terms of production. But there's other countries which are coming on stream now, which is like Sierra Leone, Namibia, and Zambia. So given a period of sustained stability, Africa will be providing most of the world's mineral resources within the next couple of decades. Now, the geology of Africa is also very favourable to it. So it consists of, you can see that map there, it sort of highlights where most of the different minerals come. But Africa generally has 5 stable cratons which have come together, and between those there's around a fold belt. It's an ancient country. It's like Australia. Some of the oldest rocks on the planet are in Africa, and most of the African continent was in place about 2 billion to 300 million years ago. 50% of Africa actually outcrops in terms of the older rocks, which is a much better exploration success ratio than what you get in Australia. And some of the major deposits that you get in these areas are household names to geologists. So there's the Witwatersrand deposit around South Africa, which is one of the world's largest gold areas. And there's also the Bushveld complex, which hosts most of the world's chromium and platinum group metals and other things. There's also the Zambian copper belt. So with that favourable geology, like I said, it's just an area that is waiting to explore and waiting to find more discoveries. So can I get the next slide, please? Now, this is an interesting graph. So if you look at there's about $113 billion, and that's in US, of currently being spent on project development in Africa. So these aren't mines that are already operating. These aren't already discovered things. These are all things that are under development. So that's an amazing amount of money that's being spent in the region. And as an example, revenue just from South Africa alone in US dollars again is around about $54 billion, and that's from PwC. Vic-based companies, mining companies already in Africa. We're quite lucky in Melbourne that we have most of the majors are based here, but BHP, Rio, MMG, Golden Rim Resources, Syrah, and 29 Metals all operate in Africa currently. So again, that's a vote of confidence in the African sector, but also how rich a lot of these areas are that these companies would go there. So if I can get the next slide, please. Why Melbourne? Now, why Melbourne is a good question indeed. So I've just mentioned about those Melbourne companies operate in Africa, but the majority of Australia's mining capital actually comes from Melbourne. It's about over 65% of the ASX is in Melbourne. I often joke to people their mine may be in WA, but their stockbroker's definitely always in Melbourne. Melbourne's a gateway to the Australian mining sector. And with the presence of those major mining companies since the Victorian gold rushes in the 1850s, a lot of the major mining companies are also based here. There's a skilled workforce, the ecosystems here, and again, the mining and mining service sector in Victoria, which people probably don't realise, is the largest sector in the whole of Victoria by market capitalisation alone. So with that mining leadership, again, that's another a thing that Victorian companies, in particular METS, can add to this, and internationalising Victorian mining companies and METS companies is probably a great strategy of what the government's intended to do, which will enhance the Australian mining brand and also create investment into Victoria, which we've seen recently with our recent gold rush, but also secure market access for METS and mining companies in overseas markets. And a good example of this is Victorian government's initiative of the International Mining and Resources Conference, where we've established a globally significant conference in Melbourne, which hope will keep growing and growing. And the last slide, please. So why Global Victoria? So Global Victoria has an aim to grow and strengthen Victoria's global engagement and international trade. I suppose we're basically tasked by government to increase the exports to the state. So we build on knowledge and skills, and we sort of try and reach out to international audiences and collaborate with various groups, and this is an example of that. We've got a global network of 23 international offices, and so speak to us for any assistance, especially in Africa. Government to government's very effective. So again, if you need help in that area, we'd be the place to speak to. We don't have an office on the African, the main part of Africa. Our offices are mainly located in the north of Africa, and our main person is Kazim Yunus, who's the general manager of our MENA office, and he covers the whole of Africa. So I've sort of got questions there, but I was going to leave them to the very end. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and let me know if you need anything else to go with that. And with that, thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Sean. A very good basis for us to move forward. Thank you very much. And our final speaker is Elizabeth Lewis-Gray. Well, Elizabeth will be well known to many of you as she's the co-founder and chair of the acclaimed Gekko Systems. However, despite the worldwide success of her company, it's her industry-leading roles that have brought her so much respect and admiration. She's been a strong advocate for innovation, collaboration, and the METS industry for almost 2 decades, with long-serving roles on the board of Austmine, that she chaired, the CSIRO's Mineral Advisory Board, and the federal government's Innovation Australia Board. She's a power in her own right, and Elizabeth, we welcome you and thank you for being a part of us today.
Thank you very much, Duncan, and really enjoyed being here. Great to revisit all this material. This is a reminder about why this industry is so exciting and why I'm so passionate about it. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and we just might move on. Emma, thank you. So there are 3 things I've sort of been asked to talk about from my experience and from Gekko's experience. We've been around for 25 years, and Africa's played a big role in Gekko's development. So there are 3 areas that I'm focusing on: the attraction of Africa, why we went there, challenges and rewards, and our experience and learnings. So just for those of you that don't know Gekko, just very quickly, we're a company that develops, we're based in Ballarat in regional Victoria. We develop and manufacture and design mineral processing technology and solutions. In addition to Ballarat, we've got offices in Johannesburg, Moscow, Vancouver, and Perth. And we also run agents in South America, Ghana, and Mexico. We've installed quite a lot of units all over the world. But if we go to the next slide, Johannesburg was actually the first office that we opened, and we opened that in March 2000. So that's quite a long time ago now, very early, 21 years ago in our company. It was the first place that we went to. And why did we go to Africa? Because Obviously, we're in the gold sector, so it was a significant region for us in the global gold industry. But we really liked the mining culture. We liked the fact that that industry in South Africa in particular, which is where we first went, had very strong technical skills. It was a very innovative, fast adopting nation. I think because of apartheid, the country had to develop a lot of its own technology. So it was used to taking new technologies and trying them out. It wasn't afraid of that, perhaps so much as we saw in the North American markets. And they had some real technical and operational issues that they needed to address, which made it easier to get new technology in there. And of course, for us at that time, which was really when the CIL gold circuits were really, and the modular ones were really growing dynamically, and a lot of them were coming out of the Australian engineers, particularly in Perth. We saw a lot of growth in Australian companies going to Africa, and so we could sort of hang on their coattails a bit. It has been an absolutely incredible ride for us. Africa continues to be our best market. It continues to be where we have our highest density of Gekko equipment installed around the world, and that's in Ghana. We've loved it on for a range of different regions. Firstly, as I said, it's been the market that's adopted our technology the fastest anywhere in the world, and the relationships we've built in Africa with companies like Goldfields and Anglo Gold Ashanti, De Beers in the early days. They've been very strong relationships. They understand Australia, we understand each other, and we have very strong technical interests. They like to see good results. But I suppose one of the great things for us is we just loved going there. They're great people, and it's an amazing continent, and it's a beautiful continent. So if you want to enrich your life, then you want to go and work places that are interesting. And we always found Africa a lot more interesting than Paris, London, or New York. So it's a pretty good reason for us to continue to invest time there. In terms of the challenges, I suppose from a country like Australia, of course, we are not, we're used to a very, I suppose, safe and controlled environment. And so we had to really learn how to understand that, how to work with some of the cultural differences, how to train our people, and how to set up systems for, travel safety protocols, and also how do we engage and, work with people from different cultures. So that's was a really important, was exciting actually, but it was also a challenge for us. And I have to say that one of the things was that our Australian culture actually fitted in very well into Africa, particularly in South Africa, but also mostly probably in West Africa, North Africa and East Africa, because Australians by and large are prepared to jump in and do the work. And so with that sort of attitude, we were able to develop very good relationships right the way through the hierarchy of the business. Clearly, some of our challenges were we had to have the equipment really ruggedized. So that took a few bit of work to do that. Of course, it's a very close-knit community in Africa, and there's always someone, if you leave a hole, someone else will fill it. So you have to be really on your toes. You can't neglect that marketplace. You have to go there regularly. And there is obviously a change in ownership in Africa. We're seeing a lot more Chinese-owned operations versus what I would probably, I don't know whether it's the right, expression, but there's a lot of Anglo-American. I don't mean the company, I mean out of North America or sort of Europe. There were a lot of, owners, sort of companies that we could go in on the coattails and have relationships with. So that was a great opportunity for us, but I think more of a challenge now in terms of ownership of mining deposits and developments. So, our journey started very much with groups like Global Victoria, Austrade, and the Australian African Chamber of Commerce. We've worked very much with those sorts of official relationships that gave us connections into government in particular, that give you credibility. And really in Africa, what absolutely changed our lives is we went and presented at a few of the South African Institute of Mining and Metallurgy technical seminars, and we discovered such interest in the technology that we did decide to open an office, and we did go back very quickly, and we were very much assisted by local support, particularly at that time, Austrade in Johannesburg. And we had a breakthrough with Ashanti Gold. We sent out a letter of all things in those days, 20 years ago, which outlined, what our technology was. And we got a phone call pretty much from the head technology guy who was based in Accra and Gardner, and saying, look, I really like your technology. It solves a problem. We're interested in having 5 of them. So that really was an very important step for us in Africa. Of course, eating steak and cooking on a braai in South Africa was an important part of the process. So we had to, learn socially how to engage with people. Of course, Africa has incredible skills, and we've got a lot to learn from the African mining industry, as well as them being able to learn from us. So we were always very respectful and open to what they had to teach us. And of course, underground mining, and it's incredible, their capability over there. So that was really important for us. And of course, one of the things, I'm sure everyone who's in this market in selling understands multi-tier selling, but I think we've discovered that it's more important in Africa than anywhere else, really being able to have relationships. And that's what you get through government and through groups like AACC, where you can get connections at all levels of the business. So it's no good just selling to the people at the bottom end. You've got to have those relationships at the top end of the business as well. And again, we engage very much with South African and African engineering houses, as well as Australian engineering houses and miners, to develop our market there. So, definitely our conclusion, as I said, it's one of our favourite markets, whether it's from financial returns, but also from just the pure enjoyment of going there. We love the people. It's just been terrific. But certainly in terms of, international trade for mining and METS between Australia and Africa, in my mind, it's delivered better understanding, relationships, regional development, and of course, financial outcomes for investors and communities. So, congratulations to Duncan and Emma on this initiative. I think it's super exciting. I think accelerators are great. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this one develops. And, certainly interested in how Gekko might participate in that.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. And there's now time for our audience to have their opportunity to have our speakers address some of the questions that have been coming through the chat box. And to that end, can I pass you back to Emma, who will facilitate the sessions? Thanks, Em.
Yes, so please go ahead. You can pop a message in the chat box, or you're welcome to, if you would prefer to, simply unmute yourself and ask a question directly. So that is an option. Otherwise, I'll just start off with a question that came through during the presentation, which I think might be answered well by either Dale or Sean. But what is some of the specific advantages that Australian METS companies can highlight in their value propositions compared to other export competitor countries such as Canada?
I'm happy to answer that one, Emma, in that a lot of the Australian METS companies have very high technology solutions, and it's those technology solutions that are leading the world. So if we take that leadership position and we start to offer that as a value add in terms of Australian technology, in terms of mining engineering, mining consulting, geology, understanding and mapping and modelling, in terms of the automation and the autonomous equipment that we have coming into the mining industry, all of that is being developed, a lot of it here in Australia, and we can use that technological lead to bring us into the market in Africa.
And to add to Dale's question, is that there's also the 5%ers that Australian companies do that other jurisdictions don't. So even speaking to Elizabeth earlier, like safety, Australian companies are very safe. We're very conscious of safety in mining, And so we generally are safer operators. The other one is the environmental, social and governance responsibilities around the operation. So Australian companies generally have very strong ESG, as they call it, the buzzword, protocols, and therefore when Australian companies and METS companies operate in an area, they're very respectful of the people and the environments in which they're operating, which gives you that extra percentage advantage over other jurisdictions which may not be.
Emma, just quickly on that, the data I saw, it was a few years ago now, so I'm not sure if it's still current, but the data I saw indicated that the Australian METS sector is about 3 times larger than the Canadian METS sector. So, you know, just in terms of comparative size, we do punch above our weight.
Thank you guys for answering that. And I believe, Paul, I think you would like to add something. If you're able to unmute yourself, or I can do it for you.
I think, Emma, I might be unmuted. Could I say thank you to the speakers today? I've really enjoyed the conversation. My name's Paul Bendall. I'm the Global Mining Leader at PwC. So I thought it might be just worthwhile a couple of perspectives. So if I look back over the last 18 months, the mining sector has survived COVID extremely well. If you look at economic returns, prices have been very good. And when you roll that back down into operations in countries, we see that it's been called out as an essential service in most countries, including in Africa. That's enabled the production to continue, people to be employed, profits made, royalties paid, taxes paid. So it's been a very good and sustainable sector for us. If you look at the opportunities going forward, I think a previous speaker referenced ESG. We certainly see governments and companies reaching out for support around ESG. What to do, what strategies, how to employ engineers, the whole gamut of consulting work, I think is readily available. Ramping up production to capitalise on this current quite attractive commodity prices. So anything in the consulting world that can add you some productivity is most welcomed. On the other end of the scale, and one of the speakers put up the life cycle of a mine, decommissioning or the closure of the mine, again, is quite an important point, goes directly to the company's licence to operate. So if you're an Australian miner with operations in Africa, your licence to operate, if you do not close properly, or you don't decommission your mine properly, then your licence to operate could be withdrawn. So again, quite a lot of consulting support available to companies on how to decommission those mines. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Paul, for that input. We do have another question actually on quite an unrelated topic. So this is from a participant asking about the role of blockchain in the METS sector in Africa. I have to say I don't personally have too much knowledge on that myself. So if any of the other panelists want to speak to that on the role of blockchain in the METS sector in Africa.
I don't have any experience in blockchain.
Neither.
but I do know, and it'd be interesting to understand the participants if they're involved and what their experience in that market is, because clearly blockchain has, you know, is going to make a big difference in the market. And I do think it's an area that Australia needs to develop its skill set in. And so if that participant has any knowledge, that would be very valuable.
My understanding of the blockchain, it's a way of tracing and verifying the authenticity of various things. And so in terms of Africa in particular, it can be a way of, you know, buying authentic diamonds as an instance, instead of getting blood diamonds, or authentic gold operations instead of some of the inherent problems you get in some of the jurisdictions. So again, blockchain has a role in that, but in terms of the METS companies, they're not actually producing or doing that, but they probably have parts and components which are part of the whole blockchain model, which may fall under that. Again, it's an area that's quite large and quite nebulous. So it's more like Elizabeth said, if you have any specific questions, we might be able to find out for you.
If I could just add to that, in that it does relate back to the traceability of the materials. And we're now seeing with countries having a zero carbon emission by 2050 target, the event of green steel and green aluminium, which is steel or aluminium or other materials that are produced without coal or without carbon, having a blockchain link that enables you to demonstrate that your steel is green or your aluminium is green will be part of that whole value process. So blockchain will have an impact in African mining around the ESG, around the environmental credentials, and around ensuring you don't have blood diamonds or any abuse of the local people in your products. And it will be in the mining industry across the globe.
And just on that, if I can come in as well, we are in the AACC is also currently involved in some fintech webinars. And whilst initially it's to do with payment systems, it's already been foreshadowed we'll be moving into EdTech and other spaces of that order, and indeed mining. So watch this space.
Great, thanks. I do see another question just come through now. Which countries in Africa are preferred and which are to be avoided, if any, for Australian METS companies? And just from my own research and understanding, I could add in a little bit of information here, but it seems that a lot of the African mining sector does accumulate in sort of regional pockets. So that West African pocket, so many of those countries which do surround Ghana have very similar mineral makeup. So in addition to Ghana, there is Sierra Leone and Burkina Faso and Mali, not so much at the moment, but so for instance, Ghana is the forefront of that West African pocket, and then moving into some of the lesser entered countries before, such as Mali and Burkina Faso. That's just my, and then there's also, for instance, in East Africa, you have Botswana, which might be your stepping stone before entering into other countries like Tanzania, for example. So I think there is such a big variety in Africa, which means that sometimes a country initially is just that stepping stone before you do move into regional countries, sorry.
As Gekko, we've worked right the way across Africa in almost every country. And really what we've found is, that primarily the question is who's the company you're dealing with, as much as which is the country that you're dealing with. And then, will they pay, have they got the expertise to make the equipment work? Can you support the equipment once it's installed? Those are the questions that we've found the most important. And then, of course, to some extent, secondary to that, but sometimes primary, is what's the security environment where that mine is placed, and what does that mean? What's the sort of stability of that country that we're going into? And what the thing is that you can't really tell. You do look at the DFAT sites to see which countries you should go to and you shouldn't go to. Well, they give you some indicator, but we've found that doesn't give you a complex enough understanding of those regions, because it might be incredibly safe in the western part of the country, but it could be quite unsafe in the eastern part of the country. So we've relied very much on some of the sort of services like SOS, who give us specific advice on which areas of the country and which when it's okay to travel. So that's the sort of safety security versus what's the quality and the style of the company that you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. And, so that's sort of really how we've focused, but we've been everywhere pretty much successfully. And sometimes we need to delay an installation by a month or two, but, we've, it's worked pretty well for us.
My only addition to that, an old boss of mine used to always say, you hunt elephants in elephant country. So a lot of the geology and stuff in Africa is what we'd call really major deposits, really attractive. And so a lot of the major companies operate in these areas just from the sheer richness of the deposits. The Democratic Republic of Congo is a good example. And so, like Elizabeth says, then once you have the majors operate in these areas, they've generally got security protocols, they've got that sort of stuff in place, and generally have a rule of law of sorts. So therefore, you're more likely to be a bit safer in those dealing with those type of companies than others. Africa also has, from a mineral law point of view, it's got two sort of tiers. So Africa, South Africa in particular, its initial laws were probably inherited more from the Dutch. So the landowner actually owns the minerals. The only other place in the world I can think of that's like that is the United States. And the rest of Africa is more off British law, which is more the Crown owns the minerals. So as a result, the Crown has a vested interest, or the governments have vested interests for these things being developed as well. So there's a lot of layers, I suppose, to look at in terms of when you're in there. But the main one, I think, what Elizabeth is touched on is the richness of the deposits, and then the security of the area you're operating in, and your risk tolerance.
Great. Thank you for that, everyone. I have someone patiently waiting to ask a question. Meg, you're welcome to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you very much, Emma, and thank you very much to the African Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry for organising this informative discussion. Notwithstanding the fact that the topic has been or is on mining equipment, technology and services, we actually work in, would you believe, wholesale cut flowers. And the reason we joined this call, it might seem a bit left field, but the reason we joined this call is because we're looking for partners to work with us on consolidating freight opportunities coming back from Africa. I mean, I understand that from this call that it being focused on export, you've got planes going across to Africa. I'm sure that all of those on the call can understand that given the COVID restrictions, air freight has doubled, if not tripled in some circumstances, and we've had a significant cutback in the number of flights coming into Australia. So we're looking for partners who have their own planes flying, or if you're contracting commercial aircraft or otherwise engaging in moving your goods from Australia to Africa, we're interested in hearing from you coming back. If you want to fill up your planes coming back. My name is Meg Jones. I'm responsible for special projects at Mr. Fresh, as in mrfresh.com.au. So just putting that out there. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on air freight, if it's something that's a big part of your business, or if you're interested, floor is open.
So, Meg, what country are you particularly interested in? Because there's a lot of different countries.
True, Sean.
And obviously Kenya's
so
quite big in cut flowers. I think the Dutch has sort of got that market sewn up.
Yep, absolutely. Kenya is the largest. We work with Kenya, Rwanda, Ethiopia. Mainly it is East Africa. There is some product that could be pulled from South Africa. Haven't looked into Botswana, never know. Certainly it is that East Africa, Southern Africa region. So yeah, really keen to know if you guys have got any availability on your flights coming back, or interest in exploring that further with us, because obviously this is not the place to have that actual discussion. That you can see from my name appearing maybe that I'm Meg Jones, and I'm Meg Jones at mrfresh.com.au, mrfresh.com.au, if you're interested in shooting me a line.
Meg, I think we've got a couple of members that I can think straight off who'd be most interested in having a conversation with you.
Really? That would be absolutely wonderful. Okay, then I'm going to put my name in, my email address in the chat box to everybody. And thank you very much for allowing me to take the floor for this slightly off-topic intervention, yet relevant, no doubt, to Australian exports and imports. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. And got an interesting question coming in here actually about the Democratic Republic of Congo and the relative size of their mining companies to other African countries.
I might be able to take some of this. I did a bit of research on this today. So the Democratic Republic of Congo, I think Australia's largest company, full stop, BHP operates there. So so does MMG, and so does Ivanhoe Minerals, I think. And so there's a lot of the majors in that particular market. Now, in terms of the local companies in the Democratic Republic of Congo, I don't think there's too many. Of the top 50 or the top 40 mining companies in the world, 4 of them in Africa or home based in Africa, and all of those are in South Africa. So the major companies in Africa is Anglo-American, Goldfields, Anglo-Ashanti, and Sibanye Stillwater, and which does the platinum group elements. So, and that's probably where the bigger local ones are. But again, a lot of them may not necessarily operate in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Did that sort of help that question?
If I may say so, in the DRC, you have to joint venture typically to start off projects with Gekko, the state-owned mining company. So that holds a large stake originally in a lot of the projects there in cobalt and copper. And as everyone knows, recently the Chinese have bought a lot of the copper cobalt mines, including off Ivanhoe and others, and Legend.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think that probably is as much question time as we can pick up on in this session. If there's any outstanding questions, we'll also put them up on our website and address them for you. We thank you for your participation in this, the launch of the AACC Africa METS Accelerator program. We look forward to working with you, with our key partners, to help you gain new market opportunities in Africa. And I thank each of our speakers for taking part and providing such good support to the pathways that we're developing. As noted at the outset, a recording of this session will be shortly uploaded to our website. We otherwise welcome you and encourage you also to consider membership of the AACC to benefit from our range of services. So again, thank you all for your participation.